Iran military commander assassinated, spy manhunt underway. Somewhere inside Iran, a car pulls up, 2 men step out. Within seconds, one of the regime's most protected commanders is gone. But this is not an isolated killing. This is the 8th targeted strike in under 2 weeks. And while Tehran scrambles to find answers on the ground, Washington is hunting 5 men across the world. With a $10 million price on their heads, a ship has vanished from the sea, a tanker has changed hands in the Strait of Hormuz, and tonight, NATO itself may be pulled into the crosshairs. What happened in the last 24 hours may be the turning point of this entire war. Welcome back to the Siege War. Now, before we get into everything unfolding tonight, I want to ask you for something. If you're one of the longtime viewers who's been with this channel for a while now, you know how much it means when you take just a moment to hit that subscribe button. It costs nothing. It takes 2 seconds, but it tells us you want to keep walking through these events together night after night. So wherever you're watching from tonight, whatever city, whatever country, drop it in the comments below. I always like to know who's out there with us, watching this unfold in real time. Now, let's get into what happened. It happened fast. Too fast for anyone to stop it. A senior commander inside Iran's most feared military branch, gone in seconds. According to multiple reports circulating from inside the country, the killing took place as part of what analysts are now calling one of the most aggressive waves of targeted assassinations Iran has faced in years. The man who was killed held a senior position tied to Iran's missile and drone programs. That matters, because this is not just any officer. This is someone who helped build the weapons Iran has used to strike its enemies across the region. Security footage, which has not been independently verified but is being widely shared by credible accounts, appears to show the moment of the attack. 2 men are seen approaching a vehicle. They move with purpose, no hesitation. Within moments, they engage their target, then retreat back to their own vehicle and disappear into the streets. It is over before anyone can react. Analysts studying the footage note something important. The operation appears coordinated. 2 shooters, a planned approach, a clean withdrawal. This is not random violence. This is the work of people who knew exactly who they were looking for and exactly how to reach him. That raises the biggest question hanging over this entire story. Who did it? Some believe Israeli intelligence is behind the operation, continuing a long campaign of eliminating Iranian military figures on their own soil. Others point to internal resistance groups, made up of Iranian citizens, who have grown furious with their own government. Still others suggest Kurdish opposition fighters operating inside Iran's borders. As of now, no group has stepped forward to claim responsibility, and Iranian authorities have not offered a clear explanation either. What is clear is the pattern. This marks roughly the 7th or 8th targeted killing of a regime-linked official in the span of just 10 days to 2 weeks. 7 or 8. In 2 weeks. That is not a coincidence. That is a campaign. And it suggests something the Iranian government does not want to admit out loud. Its own security forces can no longer protect its own commanders, even deep inside its own territory. For a regime that has spent decades projecting strength through its military and intelligence networks, this is a serious blow. It shows cracks that are growing wider by the week. To understand why this moment matters, it helps to look at what has happened inside Iran over the past several months. Late last year, mass protests broke out across the country. Iranian authorities responded with brutal force, and reports indicate tens of thousands of civilians were killed in the crackdown that followed. That anger did not disappear. It went underground. And now, as war grips the region, that same anger appears to be resurfacing in a much more dangerous form. Assassinations, ambushes, targeted killings of the very people who once ordered the crackdowns. Whether this is being carried out by foreign intelligence services, domestic resistance fighters, or some combination of both, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The Iranian regime is no longer able to guarantee the safety of its own military leadership. There is no safe house, no secure compound, no level of protection that has proven enough to stop these attacks. And with each new killing, the message being sent to Tehran grows louder. Nowhere is safe, not anymore. As this story continues to develop, more questions are emerging than answers. Was this attack tied to foreign intelligence operations that have targeted Iranian commanders before? Or is this a sign of something new, an internal uprising against the regime from within its own borders? Either way, one truth remains. Iran's military leadership is being hunted, one commander at a time, and so far, nothing they have done has been able to stop it. While the killing on land dominates headlines, another battle is unfolding. This one is happening at sea, and it may be just as dangerous. Off the coast of Yemen, a cargo vessel came under attack. Multiple projectiles struck the ship. The damage was so severe that maritime authorities are describing it as a total loss. In simple terms, the ship is finished, sunk, or as good as sunk. According to advisories from maritime trade monitoring groups, the strike happened roughly 40 nautical miles from the Yemeni coast. Accounts linked to Houthi forces claim responsibility, alleging the vessel was supporting Saudi military operations. Saudi officials have not confirmed this claim, but the pattern is becoming familiar, ship after ship, targeted in these waters. And this is not the only maritime incident developing right now. According to Iranian state media, an oil tanker linked to the United Arab Emirates has been seized. Reports claim the vessel was taken in the Strait of Hormuz and is now being redirected to the port of Bandar Abbas, inside Iran. It is important to note something here. As of now, this claim comes only from Iranian sources. Neither the Emirati government nor the United States military has confirmed it. That does not mean it is false, but it does mean caution is needed before treating it as fact. What is not in question, however, is Iran's public position on the Strait of Hormuz itself. A senior Iranian parliamentary official has stated plainly that Tehran considers the strait to be under Iranian jurisdiction. He said Iran and Iranian security forces will continue to manage passage through the waterway. This is a bold claim, because the Strait of Hormuz is not just any body of water, it is one of the most important shipping corridors on Earth, a narrow passage that carries a massive share of the world's oil exports every single day. If Iran moves to tighten its grip on this route, the impact would not stay local. It would ripple across global energy markets. Shipping insurance costs would rise. Vessels may be forced to take longer, more expensive routes. And nations that depend on oil moving freely through that strait would be forced to respond. This is why analysts see the maritime front as just as critical as the fighting happening on land, if not more so. A war fought on a battlefield stays somewhat contained. A war fought over a shipping lane touches nearly every economy on the planet. Add to this the growing frequency of ship seizures and attacks, and a picture begins to form. Iran appears to be applying pressure on multiple fronts at once: land, sea, and, as later reporting will show, cyberspace as well. Each front serves a different purpose. The maritime pressure sends a message to the world's shipping industry and to nations that rely on the strait. It says clearly, we can disrupt this whenever we choose. For now, questions remain unanswered. Is the reported tanker seizure confirmed, or still just a claim from one side? Will Gulf nations respond to Iran's declaration over the strait with military posturing, diplomatic pressure, or something more direct? And how long can international shipping continue operating in these waters before insurers and governments decide the risk has become too high? What is certain is this: the sea lanes near Iran are no longer simply a shipping route. They have become another front in a widening conflict, one where every incident, confirmed or not, adds new uncertainty to an already volatile region. On the other side of the world, a very different kind of hunt is underway. No guns, no ambush, just 5 faces and a bounty. The United States government has confirmed it is actively searching for 5 individuals linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. These are not soldiers in the traditional sense. They are believed to be hackers, people accused of breaking into American systems from behind a screen rather than a battlefield. According to officials, these 5 individuals are tied to a series of cyberattacks against critical American infrastructure, banking systems, water systems, the kind of infrastructure that, if disrupted, does not just cause inconvenience, it can put lives at risk. To bring pressure on this search, authorities have announced a reward of $10 million for information leading to their capture. $10 million for 5 names. That number alone says something about how seriously this threat is being treated. And this is not a minor cybercrime investigation. This is being treated as a national security matter. The reasoning is simple. If a hostile actor can quietly access a water treatment system or interfere with financial networks, the damage does not require missiles or bombs. It can be done silently from a keyboard, thousands of miles away. And that makes this kind of threat, in some ways, harder to defend against than a conventional attack. You cannot see it coming the way you can see a missile launch. You often only discover it after the damage is already done. This is why the manhunt for these 5 individuals has taken on such urgency. Officials investigating the case have stated clearly that anyone assisting in their capture will be rewarded, and anyone caught will face serious consequences. But there is another layer to this story, one that raises the stakes even further. Alongside reports of the cyber attacks, there are also claims that Iranian state media has been involved in soliciting funds tied to threats against American leadership, including the sitting president. This is an extraordinary claim. State-run media allegedly raising money connected to threats against a head of state. If accurate, it marks a significant escalation, moving beyond cyber attacks and proxy conflict into something far more direct. It is worth being careful here. State media claims from any government during wartime should be treated with scrutiny. But even accounting for that caution, the broader picture being described by officials is consistent. A shift from indirect proxy-style conflict toward direct targeting of American systems, and now, allegedly, American leadership itself. This marks a notable change in tone. For years, much of the tension between the United States and Iran played out through proxy forces, allied militias, and regional flashpoints. Now, with these developments, the conflict appears to be moving closer to a direct confrontation. Analysts watching this situation closely note that cyber warfare has become one of the most important battlegrounds of modern conflict, precisely because it blurs the line between military action and criminal activity. It allows a state to inflict damage while maintaining a level of deniability. But when a reward this large is placed on individuals, and when a government publicly names them as threats to national infrastructure, that deniability starts to disappear. The message from Washington is direct. These individuals will be found. And when they are, they will face the full weight of the American justice system. For now, Five Faces remain the center of one of the most significant manhunts tied to this entire conflict. Their names are known. Their alleged actions are documented. What remains unknown is where they are and how long it will take before that $10 million reward changes hands. As this search continues, one question grows more urgent by the day. If cyber attacks on infrastructure and threats against leadership are already happening, what does the next phase of this conflict look like? And how far is Iran willing to go before facing consequences it cannot walk back? The conflict is no longer contained to Iran alone. It is spreading outward, touching alliances, economies, and governments far beyond its borders. The most alarming development involves NATO itself. Iran has issued a direct warning. If the war continues to escalate, Tehran claims it will strike NATO member countries using ballistic missiles. This is not a vague threat. It names a specific alliance. 32 countries bound together by a mutual defense agreement. NATO has responded, stating publicly that it is monitoring possible threats against American targets in Europe. Officials from the alliance say they remain prepared to respond to any threat and will do what is necessary to defend their members. This single statement carries enormous weight, because NATO's foundation rests on one core principle. An attack on one member is treated as an attack on all. If Iran were to follow through on this threat, even partially, it would not simply be a regional conflict anymore. It could pull dozens of nations into direct involvement. That is the level of risk now on the table. At the same time, economic consequences are already unfolding. The United Arab Emirates has announced it is halting all commercial and financial transactions with Iran. This decision comes after the UAE itself was struck by Iranian ballistic missiles. Until now, financial and trade connections between the two nations had continued despite rising tensions. That is no longer the case. The UAE has effectively cut the cord. This move raises a fair question. Why did this financial relationship continue for as long as it did, given the state of hostilities? But more importantly, it signals something larger. Gulf nations that have tried to remain economically flexible throughout this conflict are now being forced to pick a side, whether they want to or not. As missiles fall closer to their own territory, neutrality becomes harder to maintain. Meanwhile, in Iraq, the pressure is mounting in a different but equally serious way. Iraq's prime minister is reportedly receiving direct threats from groups backed by Iran. This comes shortly after a separate incident, in which Iran was accused of attempting to assassinate a regional governor in the Kurdistan area. Multiple drone strikes targeted his residence. That assassination attempt failed, but the message behind it was clear. Iran's influence inside Iraq remains active, even as its military faces mounting pressure elsewhere. Adding to this tension, Iran's parliamentary speaker has reportedly traveled to Iraq, meeting with Iraqi officials, as well as Iranian-backed militia leaders operating inside the country. For a government that continues to issue threats against the United States and its allies, this visit raises serious concerns about Iraq's ability, or willingness, to limit Iranian influence within its own borders. Iraq finds itself in an extremely difficult position. Its government maintains support from the United States. Yet, Iranian-backed militias operate freely inside its territory, and its own leadership now faces threats from the very groups Iran continues to back. This is the definition of a nation caught in the middle. Taken together, these four fronts, the assassination campaign inside Iran, the escalating maritime confrontations, the manhunt for cyber operatives, and now this widening regional fallout, paint a picture of a conflict that is no longer isolated. It is expanding, touching military alliances, global shipping routes, financial systems, and now the internal stability of neighboring governments. The central question moving forward is no longer simply what happens next inside Iran. It is how many other nations will be pulled into this conflict, whether by missile threats, economic decisions, or political pressure, before this war reaches its next major turning point. For now, the region watches closely, waiting to see whether Iran's threats against NATO remain rhetoric, or whether they become the spark that turns a regional conflict into something far larger.